just 8% of adults keep their resolutions all year. Only 8%. Maybe, who's been one of those that's dropped it in the past? And now we don't do it anymore, right? While 43%, almost half of the goal setters have even forgotten their resolution by February. And for some reason, even though, you lose the resolution so fast, check out this last stat. 85% of people with resolutions believe their impacts will extend beyond a single year, and over half see it extending into 5 years. And yet, only 8% even make it to the end of the year. And I wanted to start with this because I hope, being a good dad or a good mom isn't just a New Year's resolution for us. Or it's not just something that I'm trying to do this year or making goals this year. Being a good parent isn't a year-long thing, right? But it's a journey or an adventure that we set on with God for at least 18 years, but for the rest of our life, right? My parents, my dad was really 18 years. He said it was a Georgia state law to move out at 18. And I didn't know how to check. I just know what it said, right? And so I made sure to get out by 17 and a half, you know what I'm saying? But it was an adventure that we're going on that starts now. It's not just a year thing. It's not just a resolution. It's not just a goal to be a good parent. It's not just an aspiration that we have. This is a lifestyle that we have dove into together. And so we don't necessarily need New Year's resolutions to be good parents or new goals to be good parents. But what we really need is we need to adopt some family rhythms to be good parents. And that's what we wanted to talk about today. Briefly, we're going to have a good conversation and time for us to discuss all together. But what Toy and I have been going on is saying, hey, let's not just have goals, let's really get some consistent rhythms for our family. And I like this definition of family rhythms. Family rhythms are intentional, unifying, and consistent patterns and behaviors to create a healthy and thriving environment for our children to raise up in. Where they're intentional, they're unifying, and they're consistent. It's not just a goal, it's not just a resolution for this year, but it's a lifestyle we're entering into and having rhythms for our family that our kids can grow up and raise up in. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at Deuteronomy 6, and we're going to make a few comments about this. And what we're going to have is a good chance to break into discussion groups so that we can discuss some of the rhythms we've had and share with one another and learn from one another. Have some good time as we're entering this new year where we all can learn from one another to have great rhythms in our family. Sounds good, guys? Yeah. So we'll be in Deuteronomy chapter 6 together is where we're gonna launch from. Here's a classic passage on parenthood and how to raise your children. But I think it's so good in the beginning of the year. In Deuteronomy 6, it says, "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord as long as you live by keeping all of his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life." And he continues down to verse 4. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be in your hearts, and press them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates." You know, as we read this passage, it's clear this isn't just a New Year's resolution. This isn't a short-term goal. No, this is a lifestyle to enter into to raise our children up together. And I just want to kind of go through those three, kind of concepts of rhythms of intentionality, unifying, and consistency. I think it's all over this passage in Deuteronomy. So it's intentional. Impress them on your children. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to teach my children how to follow God or raise up to be high-character people unintentionally. It takes so much intentionality to teach my children to love the Lord their God. It takes so much intentionality. I'm not going to accidentally help them become loving. Someone mentioned gratitude, right? Trying to teach their child to be grateful. I'm not going to unintentionally teach my children how to be grateful. That takes a ton of intentionality. I'm not going to unintentionally impress anything on my children, at least good stuff. I'm probably going to unintentionally impress bad stuff on my children. Right? And so it takes intentionality to impress on our children. And then talk about them. The things I talk about, I don't know about you, but at the dinner table, if I'm not careful, Toya becomes the one that can keep the conversation going with our 5 and 2-year-old, and I can start to zone out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so easy for me to have hey, what'd you do today, buddy? Oh, great. What was we do highs and lows, right? Of course, that takes intentionality. What's your high? What's your low? And after that, I'm out, right? And I've tried to do my engineering kind of structure. I had 5 things I was going to ask him for 5 days a week, right? And then Cam, after week 2, went, Dad, I don't want to know another question, right? Because it's the same questions every week. But it takes intentionality to talk about God with our children. How intentional are you with what you're talking to your children about? Would your children know what you're impressing on them? Are you that intentional? Secondly, was unifying, right? Rhythms are supposed to be unifying for us as a family. I love this in verse 8. Tie them as symbols on your hands. Bind them on your foreheads. Whether it was literal or not, some rabbis kind of took that literally. They wore boxes with little scriptures in them, right? But the concept is, if you took that literally, and your family had the same scriptures tied around their neck, and the same scriptures on their forehead, which I don't think that was literal, but the concept, though, wouldn't that be very unifying? And I might be embarrassing for certain children, but at least it'd be a unifying embarrassment, right? But where you're unifying together over the scriptures that you are committing to. And then finally, it's consistent. Write them on your door frames of your houses and on your gates. Why is it that concept where you go in and out of your door and in and out of your gate every single day? And so what's the point of that? Abraham's saying that, or Moses is saying, you need to be consistent with these scriptures. As we're talking about rhythms, I want you to start thinking and considering for you and your family, and what rhythms do you have? And how intentional are they? How unifying are they for you and your family? And are you consistent in them? Or are they more like a New Year's resolution and then falling off quickly? You guys with me? Before Toya comes up, I think the important thing on this, guys, is Nick and I talk a lot about, Nick Shaw, we talk a lot about raising our kids. And one thing that I've noticed when talking to my friends at this life stage, and what he's noticed talking to a lot of adults of high schoolers, is sometimes it can be, the thought can come up of, well, it doesn't matter how intentional I am right now when I got little kids in the house, because they don't really understand what's going on anyways. But once they get to middle school, or especially high school, when they can start to understand God more, or make commitments to God more, then I'll get really intentional. Am I the only one that's ever thought that? Wow, y'all make me feel called out right here. I'm the only one that's ever thought that. But what Nick has shared with me, and Rita shared with me, is that they'll have conversations with the Kadinskis and other parents of high schoolers. And they'll have all these conversations with high school parents that will say, when they were the ones that waited. That said, I wasn't going to be intentional until they got old enough to figure it out. And now these high school parents are saying, I wish I would have started way back before elementary school. I wish I would have started back when they were 3, 4, and 5. I wish I would have started back when they were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. They get these rhythms and these patterns and these behaviors in their life, because if you're not intentional about what you do, the truth is there are rhythms in every single household. And if you're not intentional about it, there are going to be rhythms that aren't guiding them towards the Lord. And so we don't want to be those high school parents that are looking back going, why didn't I start that way back then? Instead of thinking they were learning back then or listening back then, when in reality, as someone was sharing, man, you teach them to be grateful one day, and they're teaching you the next day to be grateful, right? Or, man, we teach them, hey, buddy, yellow lights are for slowing down. You best believe, every time I speed up to a yellow light, I'm getting called out by my son, right? Because they are listening. They are listening. Toya's going to come up and share more about this.
Good morning. Good to be here. Yeah, I think, as we were preparing for this, one of the phrases that I feel like the Spirit kept putting on my heart is to capture the opportunity of a lifetime. This is really the opportunity of a lifetime to be parents and raise our family and raise our children. There's this terrible thing on Instagram or that's you only have 18 summers with your children. I'm I hope not. Man, you can't come over for dinner when he's 25. What's that about, But the reality is the rhythms that our children have will be a result of the rhythms we have as parents, right? They will be a product of whatever we do. And one of the things that I love, don't be impressed, Jordan and I have only done this once, okay? Don't get excited. But we are trying this year to every first Thursday meet up, because now Caleb is in class 4 days a week. I have 4 mornings. If you guys want to hang out, text me, okay? Like, I have 4 mornings where I have kid-free from 9 to 1. I have no idea what I'm doing with myself. But every first Thursday, we want to go to Jay Christopher's and have breakfast and just talk about, hey, what did we say we were going to do last month? How are we doing it? That's from, one time, we were like, let's do a family devo. Cam goes, what's a family devo? We were like, okay, we're really doing great here. Pick back up on that, right? But we want to check in, hey, we said we were going to do this with the boys, with one-on-one time, with our budget, with date nights. Like, how are we doing at the list that we came up with doing? You guys are welcome to hold us accountable the first Friday of every month and ask if we did that. But yeah, it just makes me think of the opportunity of a lifetime. Most of us at work, there's a culture at our jobs. And if you have a healthy job culture, it doesn't just happen. There are team building exercises and Christmas parties, and hopefully you get a bonus and PTO, and all these things add to your experience being in that organization, to your desire to invest in that organization, and how much you want to stay and come back to that organization. Like, Google is famous for giving their people naps at work. I'm like, how do I work for Google? All of that stuff adds to your desire to bring your skill set and your talents and give it to this organization. Our children will grow up and have skill sets and talents and personalities and desires. But what's the culture of our home that we're creating to allow them to say, this is a place I want to give it to? Or is the basketball team going to be the place that they're like, actually, people hear my opinions better here than at home, right? Like, how can we foster that? And we really get the opportunity to teach our kids what it means to be in our family, which is actually a subset of God's family, right? And so it doesn't come naturally. I know we need a lot of help, but one of the prayers that a friend of mine prays that I'm trying to adopt in my life and can encourage us to pray for our families is, God, show me how good it can get. Because the world will show you how bad it can be, right? The world can show you how toxic family dynamics can be. And some of us come from family dynamics that we're like, we're not going to do that, right? But God, show me how good it can be in your family. Show me how good the qualities of your family can trickle down into my address, into my home with my children. And we really get to be a light. And I think I'm really confident that in this room there's so many ideas and resources and practices and habits that we can learn from each other, so we don't have to feel like we have to reinvent the wheel. Because one thing that I do feel like is bombarding us as parents, and me and Jordan were talking about this yesterday. I feel like moms are more on social media than dads. I don't know if that's true. Maybe that's why dads don't have dad guilt. Have you guys ever even heard that term? Dad guilt? No, it's because moms are like, you should be doing lymphatic massages and eating dietary, oh gosh, calm down. So I think with us, one of the things that we're fed is this idea that when parents are not intentional, the children set the culture of the home. And children really run the shop. You guys know what the culture of our home would be if children everything would be dinosaurs. I would roar for a living. They were we were in chicken nuggets and applesauce in pouches all day. And I just think about what comes natural to Camden or Caleb. Camden's 5, Caleb is 2. We were driving the other day, and then we were just quiet, because sometimes, I just need quiet. Out of nowhere, Cam goes, how does Spider-Man beat Venom? And I'm like, is that what you're thinking about right now? Is that where your head is at? And he started strong. He's like, I don't understand. We would be all over the place if they were the ones setting the pace, right? And one thing that I learned, just even sitting there, I just jotted this down from our little icebreaker, is as parents, we will do anything to give our children what they're asking for that we have the ability to give. We are 100% willing. Sometimes we're not 100% able. Cam is asking me, for Christmas last year, he said he wanted to go to space. And I was like, okay, let's add to the list. I would love to do that for you, but I am unable to do that for you, right? The cool thing about our Father, because we are children of God, is that He is willing and able. So what are we asking God on behalf of our families? What are we asking God on behalf of our children? Because He is our dad, right? Like, He wants to drive to 5 Walmarts to give you what you need, right? Like, He wants to make ice cream at 1 a.m. to make sure you wake up, and like, He wants to do that, but what are we requesting of Him? Are we faithful in our request? And I wanted to bring this book up because I'm going to start reading this in February, and I just wanted to invite anyone who is interested to join me. This is not a book club. I'm not starting a text thread or an email. There's no check-in. You don't even have to tell me. Y'all got stuff to do, okay? But if you're interested, this is a really good book. It's called, I haven't read it, but I've been recommended it a million times. It's called Habits of a Household, Practicing the Story of God in Everyday Family Rhythms. And as we were, thinking about this service, I was like, I want to read this book. So if anyone is interested, you want to order this book, obviously if you read it, you want to share, I'm happy to text about it, but I don't want you to feel like this was like another email you were going to get. But yeah, I just want to encourage us to consider like what it would look like to capture the opportunity of a lifetime, because our children are the greatest role that we have on this earth, is to really, other than our partners, is to really raise them in the way that God calls us to.
Amen. Amen. So, thank you, Ben. What we're going to do before we break up, we want to learn from each other. So the Maleiko is actually going to come up and share some of their family rhythms they've done that have really helped them before we break up and share with one another. So thank you, Maleiko.
Go. All right, good morning. This is one of my favorite times. That is a safe space, intimate space. It's not just a giant service, or to be able to have conversation and learn together. I know a lot of you, we know a lot of you. For those that don't know us, I'm Buddy Maleiko. This is my wife, Anna. We have my son, our son Colin, and he is turning 12 in March. And Bella's turning 14 in February. So we're a little further along. So I was asked we're going to share here just over the course of about 5 to 10 minutes, to share about some of our practicals. I actually like rhythm. Rhythm sounds cool, it's better. But practicals. And I'm honestly, I'm very methodical in my build, so I enjoy the practicals. I don't know, is anybody like, you like the practicals, or this is what needs to happen to get things done? That's a certain build, right? It's really, that's important to us and our family. And so we're going to share a few of those things. Before I share anything, though, I do want to say, during the highs and lows, been doing that since they were very little. Just did that with our kids last night before bed. It is awesome. Keep that up. It's so important to promote that discussion daily.
We forget to ask them.
Yeah.
What was your high?
Yeah, I'm like putting them to bed and walking out, what's your highs and lows? Like, oh, sorry. So that's great. And then Billy's, okay, well, Melissa, wherever your drone is, that's where our drone is as well. I think if it's the same drone, we got to do some digging, honestly. It's like, they're just meant to go away the first time you open it, you have to buy another one. So, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I took some notes here, guys. So first of all, when I talk about practicals, when we talk about rhythm, what that is, just so you kind of understand, it's as a family unit, and the goal around it is that in some capacity, daily or consistently, depending on your situation, that you have your family touching God, whether it's just a brief moment, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's an hour. Most of it's more brief moments than anything close to 10 minutes or an hour, but you're together touching God daily. That's kind of how I view it. It's really, really important. So before I begin, I do want to say that we are imperfect people speaking in an imperfect family, in an imperfect world, as we're trying to figure this out, so we don't have all the answers. Everyone has their own build. You'll learn this as your kids start to grow up, and I'm learning this very quickly now, even over the last few years. We're all wired very different, right? They're not going to stick to the plan that you just put out now when they're 2, and it's going to look a lot different when they're 12 and when they're 14, and whatever that looks like for us and for you guys when our kids are 22, and we're around to see that. And that's all by design, too. So that's one thing to know, like, nothing's broken. There's not something that got, like, that was off in when something was formed. It clearly says throughout the Bible that God that knows each one of us in the womb, and it's part of the design. So I think whatever we're dealing with now with our children, whatever we're looking at with best practices, just to know that. So it's really, really important. And then here are some practicals. We got together in the kitchen yesterday, and I just asked the family, instead of me just deciding or just getting with Anna, I just got the whole family together and I said, Colin, Bella, Anna, what are things that help us stay close to God? And this is what was compiled. I'll share a few, and we'll finish off, and then we'll close with the Bible verse. So the first one I have is, and this is probably the most obvious, start early and stick with it, is praying together, praying at night, praying in the car, on the way to church or school, or whatever it may be. Super obvious, I get it, but that's just the core one that you really want to get down. This one's going to be for maybe as some of your kids get a little older, but it's stuff to kind of look for as you're progressing and planning for. And this one's really special to me because I didn't know what would come from this one. And it's a while back, our kids now are old enough to have phones, and so we have a family text chain, and we'll share on that text chain things that are exciting or funny thing, whatever. But I started sharing a Bible verse in the morning, most mornings. If I'm just looking at something quickly for myself, and I'll just share it. It has a little visual to it to kind of keep it engaging and exciting. And I would share it. I would just send it to the family text chain. I don't know what happens when it goes there. Hopefully someone reads it, but I'm going to send it. And nothing happened for a while. I just kept sending it. And then every once in a while, I would have Bella pop one back. And I was like, whoa, all right. And I wouldn't say too much about it. I would just let that naturally progress. And so Bella, maybe once a week, pop one back. And then just recently, Colin, 11 years old, turning 12, started popping a Bible verse back to me. And then this weekend, I knew he was up at 8:30 in the morning because the first thing that I saw was, boop, Bible verse pops up from Colin on our family text chain. And I'm like, what? And so the reason I bring that up is just the consistency and some of the things that we're doing. You might not see the results.
You have to like every day.
You might not see the results, though, daily back, or you might not see whatever you're hoping for immediate, but there is a return to that. So that's one that I want to share. Serving together, whether it's a meal train, or, if someone's sick, there's things that North River hosts that you can be part of that we've done. Making bags for the homeless, we've done a few times. It's been really helpful. Tomorrow, I think we're serving here at North River. I'm building bookcases. If anyone wants to build bookcases, I have an opportunity for you. Because that's what we're doing here. And we'll be here serving. And even at a younger age, to have your kids watching you serve is really important. Even if they can't build a bookcase or they can't do whatever sorting we're doing, whatever we're doing, that they're part of that. And they know that that's a core function and a rhythm of your family to be served.
I was going to say, I would always make the point, even when I know at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do if he was home when my kids were young was bring them with me. But it was really good for them to see me walk a meal up to the door for someone. Things like that. And I would explain to them, this is what we're doing. And my kids also have done that many times with my dad, who will bring soup to people, things like that. He will come pick them up just to have them go with him and see, and deliver that.
That's good. Here's another one. You can start this young. We started it fairly young, and it's super easy to do. And that's we created a Christian playlist. Can you please tell me the name? I know you said okay.
It's kind of. I told him if Bella was in here, she'd be like, "Oh my God, that's so cringy."
It's a little cringy. It's because we created it years ago. The playlist is called "God Is Dope,"
Oh.
and so it's just we never changed it. Yeah. So
it's like Alexa, play "God Is Dope."
It's all Chris Tomlin is kind of a core piece of it. There's a lot of it. He's a Christian songwriter. There's a lot of different songs on there. We can add to them. Anybody can add to them. If I hear one of the kids or Anna listening, it's like, let's add it. I got to tell you, that can be played in the car. That can be, usually if I'm the first one down in the morning, I'll ask Alexa to play, just to kind of have it in the kitchen. As people kind of come down to start their day, it's just in the background. Just to kind of get some good vibes going, good focus, as we're starting to figure out how this day is going to go. It happened this morning, actually. So just something like that. It's super easy. Once you do it, you just have to call out a few words, and it's happening. You can do that anywhere. So just something to think about there and to consider as you're making your family rhythms. And then I have two more, and I'll just pass it off to Anna. Oh, this one's really, really important, and this means a lot to me because I grew up in a very different situation than Anna, where it's a little bit more. There's four of us, and won't get into the details, but I didn't really have that one-on-one time with my dad and things like that. So I purposely, and the cool thing is no matter how we did grow up, by the way, within the church and other examples that are around us, we can pull for things that I actually don't want that, and I do want that. And thank you, Lord, for putting me in a situation where I can see these things. And you can build your own family. You don't have to go off of, well, this is what I had, so this is what happens, right? And God allows that through us being together and having the community that we have. So where I go with that is the parent-child one-on-one times, even at a young age, super, super important. I had one with Colin yesterday. It was actually the first Highs and Lows. It was his high for the day. And we went to Peace, Love, and Pizza. We had a slice of pizza, and I had cards that had dad jokes on them. Nice. And we just sat there, and for like an hour, we're laughing at these stupid jokes, eating pizza, had no other agenda than to spend time together. The reason I say that, as far as a rhythm too, though, is because sometimes there's no agenda. Maybe it's just sitting with Bella at Starbucks and getting a coffee. In her case, she likes strawberry refresher. That's her really, really expensive drink. I was like, so there's no gold in that. It's just strawberries, because of how expensive it is. I think there should be something more in there. But anyway, just getting together. But then also you can open that up to spiritual times. The one thing I would caution you with is don't make those times with a spiritual agenda. That sounds kind of weird, but don't make it that your kids think this is being done for another agenda than just to spend time with me. If it naturally comes up in conversation, though, or just sporadically you say, hey, like we've done a few times where it's like, let's go on the front porch and just read the Bible or a book together for a little bit, and that would be part of it. And you can kind of bring that into it, but that wouldn't be the core function of it. That's very, very important. And to have that consistently, and we both do that really well because we're intentional about it. Because if you're not intentional, you know the world is intentional about what they're teaching your children, right? It's not just if we're not intentional, we miss something. If we're not intentional, there's a different direction they're going because the world is intentional. Finally, my last one that's really important to me, I'm going to tell you right now, man, I wish you could see some of the videos of us trying to have family devotionals. Because anything that you're thinking of a perfect family devotional very rarely happens, and if it does, you're kind of pausing to be like, there's a trap here somewhere. Why did this go so well? Because it usually does. I've had family devo. What I'm about to say here about family devos, I want a preference. We do actually do it fairly consistently. When we do family devos, though, there's been times it ended with everyone to their room. Everyone to their room. We're done. We're not doing this. But more often than not, it's good. It's a good experience, and they know that it's going to happen. A lot of times they'll have it happen around core times, like holidays, just we haven't had it in a while, but if we're on a vacation kind of thing. And I'll say this, that don't let family devos overwhelm you. It really can even just be a few minutes. The way that I look at it is if you start with a prayer and end with a prayer. If you include a Bible verse, so God's speaking and it's not just you. You ask a few questions, people just for engagement. Maybe you can bring a prop to keep things exciting, right? And then, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for the rest of my family, but I'm terrible at singing, so if I want to include some worship, we usually have Chris Tomlin, the Christian songwriter, join us through YouTube on the TV. He usually gives us 2 solid songs, and we can kind of get in the zone there. And that's about a 10, maybe 12-minute Devo there, or so. So anyway, those are the things that I would recommend as just rhythms to kind of aim for. I know you guys have a lot of your own stuff too, but those have been super helpful to us. Anna's going to share about 2 more, and then I'll end us with a Bible verse.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that. You know, I did grow up doing a lot of these things, and I can vouch that it does really work when you start so young. My parents have me and Sarah teaching us scripture on video when we were 2 or 1.5, and I remember Monday night was sacred family night. I mean, you did not plan anything else on family nights, and and he grew up completely opposite in a very dysfunctional family, but he is the most intentional person I have ever met, and I am not. I am like super ADHD. Like for me to focus on doing something every day is so hard for me. I mean, I have to set phone a lot. For me to be
say something really, God-centered to Bella today. Like, I have to set a phone alarm. And I think probably for a lot of moms, your head is, spinning. So you might have to set those reminders for yourself. But just give yourself grace and just know that you can incorporate one thing a day. It doesn't have to be huge. So I was just going to mention, this was encouraging. I feel like this is one of those things that you see will come back, that you start early on, and then when they're almost 14, things like this can happen. And that age is not easy with a teenage girl. So we started seeing her. My mom gave Bella these for Christmas. They're prayer cards, and on one side has a scripture, on the other side it has a blank space for you to write your prayer. And yeah, she did say it was okay. So every night since like the new year, since she got these, she's been laying one on Colin's floor, our son.
But she writes it.
She writes the prayer, like, "Dear God, I pray Colin has an awesome day." She wrote, like, she knew he was struggling with his math class. She's like, "I pray his math teacher will be nice to him tomorrow." And I mean, that have siblings, like, for one of them to do something really nice for the other is like so encouraging. So this is huge because, and it really does show, I feel like, the consistency that he has let our family in, because she's done it every single morning. So it's so encouraging. The other thing I was going to mention, and this is, I'm telling you, like, media and electronics, whether you want it or not, it's just going to come every year that goes by more and more. So you take it and do good. Up on the TV in our house, we have a Roku TV. This is something Bella figured out too, and your kids probably will know by age 7. You can add things on there. So she has added scriptures up there. So when it goes blank, it's like a slideshow. So when no one's watched it for a while, so we just leave it on throughout the day. There's a picture of our family, then it'll show a scripture. A picture of our family, then it'll show us another scripture. Just a cool thing that's like around the house. And then I had one more thing, and that was bringing mentors into your life, and not just parenting advice for you guys, but for your kids. So finding like a middle schooler or a high schooler to really, like, reach out to your child that they think are so cool. I have my nephews that really do that for Colin. We found a college girl that does that for Bella now, that she comes over like once or twice a week to hang out, have dinner. But you can totally start that younger. You don't have to wait till middle school, because I remember growing up, my parents had so many people in the house, and for them to have someone to look up to that's godly is so good, because they're going to school every day, being around people that they might think are cool that are not godly. So just, having those influences, that's something we've tried to consistently do as well.
Thank you. It says, Proverbs 22, it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it."